Hey guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am your host, Heather, and I've been podcasting on Tudor England since 2009, making my show the original, the OG Tudor History Podcast. This channel is where I put all of my episodes from all of my shows, as well as tons of extra content like this video right here. So tomorrow is International Women's Day, and so to mark the occasion, I am doing a video here on some of, I say, the top 10 Tudor women, kick-ass Tudor women. It's in no particular order. If you can't tell, I really enjoy talking about Tudor women because, we do all of this stuff about women at court, and they're the women that we tend to talk about, and obviously they deserve it. They made history, all of that. There were also lots of other women doing other kick-ass things, right? Obviously, it's not like every woman who did anything lived at court, and I like telling those stories. Actually, about 10 years ago, I started doing an audio course, or a video course, I guess at the time. It was called Kick-Ass Tudor Women. And then a company called Himalaya Media asked me to turn that into an audio course. So I actually have an audio course you can buy. They're an audio course company, and it's called, Kick-Ass Tudor Women, which was super fun. So what I want to say is I have a long history with kick-ass Tudor women. So we're going to talk about 10 of my favorites today. Before we get started, though, if you want to see more Tudor history in your YouTube feed, women or not, go ahead and hit subscribe so you never miss a video that I put out. All right, let's get started with the list. I should really just put on my glasses before I start these, but I forget. And because also I'm old and I forget things. So here we are. All right, so like I said, tomorrow is International Women's Day, which means it's the perfect time to celebrate some of the most kick-ass women of Tudor England. The ones who ruled, fought, built, painted, and generally made sure that their names would not be forgotten. Some of these women you will likely know: Margaret Beaufort, Katherine of Aragon, Bess of Hardwick. But I've also thrown in a couple of lesser-known ones because, honestly, history is full of incredible women who don't get enough attention. So, let's get into it. Number 1, again, this is in no particular order. Margaret Beaufort, the kingmaker, queenmaker. If there was one woman who knew how to play the long game, it was Margaret Beaufort. She gave birth to Henry VII when she was but 13 years old. It was a terrifying position for anyone, let alone a girl living in the middle of the Wars of the Roses. Also, her husband had died. So she's at a castle in the middle of a war zone, giving birth. She's 13. I mean, it must have been terrifying. God bless her. But she wasn't about to just sit back and let the world dictate her son's fate. She spent decades maneuvering behind the scenes. She formed alliances. She funded rebellions. She pulled every political string available. First, it was to try to keep her son safe, to try to save his life. And then when it became clear that there was a potential opening for him, of course, a lot of times people think, oh, she wanted him to be king from the very beginning. Edward IV had been king, and it looked as if the Wars of the Roses was over. It looked like he was the Henry VII, like it was over, the Yorkists had won. So at that point, she just wanted him to be safe and not be killed. So then after Edward died, Richard becomes king, people are disaffected. She thinks, oh, maybe there's an opening here. And then she negotiates alliances, marriage alliances, things like that, and had helped her son become the king. She got her son on the throne in 1485. Even after that, she didn't just fade into the background. Oh, no, not my girl, Margaret Beaufort. She really kind of helped to rule alongside Henry. Remember, he had been out of the country. He grew up out of the country. He didn't know the alliances. He didn't know the politics. He trusted his mother implicitly, and she was able to help guide him through some of these tricky situations. She helped him set up his government. She founded colleges. She made sure no one ever questioned her son's right to be the king. She was an absolute bloody powerhouse, and I love that woman. Number 2, Katherine of Aragon, the warrior queen. Everybody remembers Katherine of Aragon as she was Henry's first wife, the woman who he dumped to marry Anne Boleyn. But before all that drama, she did something way more impressive. She won a war. In 1513, Henry was off in France trying to prove that he was a warrior king, and he left Catherine in... I just did that, you guys. I just made that face. Anyway, he left Catherine in charge as regent. And that's when James IV of Scotland invades England. Instead of panicking, Catherine sends an army to the north, crushes the Scots at the Battle of Flodden, and kills James IV in the process. I mean, she didn't physically kill him herself, but he was killed. And just to rub salt in the wound, she supposedly wanted to send Henry his head as a trophy, which, is just next level Tudor wife energy right there. She actually made a flag out of part of coat that he was wearing. She fought for her marriage, for her daughter Mary's legitimacy, and for the Catholic faith. I sometimes honestly think she was a little bit too stubborn, but again, she never backed down. And you know what? God bless her for it. I don't always agree with how she did it because, I feel so bad for her and Mary. I know how I feel about my daughter. I can't imagine being separated from my daughter. If somebody was like, yeah, you just have to go to a nunnery and say our marriage was invalid, I'd be like, cool, as long as I get to see my daughter. But um, she had a higher calling, I suppose. All right. Number 3, Bess of Hardwick, this self-made powerhouse. Most Tudor women had to rely on marriage to secure their futures. But Bess of Hardwick turned her marriage into a financial empire. She married 4 times. Each time she leveled up, gaining land, wealth, and influence. By the time she was on husband number 4, the Earl of Shrewsbury, she was one of the richest women in England. She was actually second richest only to the Queen herself. But what really set her apart was what she did with that wealth. She built Hardwick Hall, which still stands today. It's famous for its massive windows. Of course, glass was very, very ridiculously expensive. So there was this saying, Hardwick Hall, more glass than wall. And Hardwick Hall is famous for these amazing glass windows. She also survived the nightmare assignment of being Mary Queen of Scots' jailer for 15 years. It pretty much destroyed her marriage, but she did keep her family intact somewhat. She built Hardwick Hall. She was pretty awesome. Tudor England was a man's world, but Bess didn't care. She made her own rules. Katherine Parr, number 4. Katherine Parr gets a lot of credit for surviving the marriage to Henry VIII, which in and of itself is a pretty big deal. But she was so much more than Henry's last wife. She was a trailblazer for women in literature. She was the first woman to publish a book in English under her own name. At a time when most women weren't educated enough to write at all, her prayers and meditations became a bestseller. Yes, the Tudors had bestsellers. She also outmaneuvered her political enemies, who literally had an arrest warrant drawn up for her, against her for heresy. When she found out, she played sick. She threw herself at Henry's feet. She convinced him she was totally obedient, that she was just trying to have him educate her mind because her mind was only a woman's mind. It was so helpless, and she needed him to educate her. And the next day, when the soldiers came to arrest her, Henry greeted them with insults and sent them away. Then she went on to outlive Henry. She married Thomas Seymour and tried to run an early version of a Tudor royal nursery school for Elizabeth I, Edward VI, and Jane Grey. That didn't end well for her, but she still left a massive impact on women's education and publishing. Number 5, Levina Teerlinc, the miniature master. Hans Holbein gets all the glory when it comes to Tudor portrait painters, but Levina Teerlinc was just as important, if not more so. She was a Flemish artist invited to England to serve as a royal painter, and she served under 4 different Tudor monarchs, Henry, Edward, Mary, and Elizabeth. She also got paid more than Hans Holbein, so, that's a pretty big deal. Her specialty was miniature portraits, those tiny detailed paintings that became the hottest trend in the Tudor court. And she wasn't just some background artist. She got paid more than most of the men in her field. It is rare to find a woman artist in Tudor England, let alone one who was making bank while doing it. So good for her, I say. Number 6, Elizabeth Barton, the visionary rebel. Most people in England knew better than to speak out against Henry VIII, but not Elizabeth Barton. She started as a poor servant girl, but in 1525, she had a vision, the kind that made people believe that she was touched by God. Before long, she became known as the Holy Maid of Kent, drawing huge crowds who came to hear her prophecies. Then she did the one thing you absolutely do not do in the 1530s. She publicly opposed Henry's divorce from Katherine of Aragon. And not just once. She kept at it, claiming that if Henry married Anne Boleyn, he would die within months. Henry did not take that well. She was arrested, tortured, and executed in 1534, but for a time, she was one of the loudest voices speaking against the king. Then we have Katherine Fenkyll, number 7, Katherine Fenkyll, the business mogul. Plenty of women ran businesses in Tudor England. They would, inherit them from their husbands or their fathers, especially brewing, that type of thing. But running them successfully on their own, not as common. Enter Katherine Fenkyll. She was a London merchant, married to a successful draper. When he died, she didn't just take the inheritance and fade into the background. She took over the business. She ran a thriving cloth trade, navigated the brutally competitive world of Tudor commerce, and even left money in her will for apprenticeships, making sure that the next generation also had opportunities. Tudor women were rarely allowed into the world of businesses and guilds, but Katherine made sure that she wasn't just in the game, she was winning it. Next, Mary Neville, Lady Dacre, the Avenger. If you think Tudor noblewomen just quietly accepted their fates, you haven't met Mary Neville. Her husband, Thomas, was executed by Henry VIII after a botched robbery turned into a murder. Most widows in her position would have been ruined, but not Mary. She spent years fighting the crown to get her lands and titles back, going up against some of the most powerful men in the kingdom, and she actually won. She rebuilt her family's fortune, regained her son's inheritance, and proved that Tudor women weren't just sitting around waiting for things to happen to them. Number 9, Mary Herbert, the Countess of Pembroke, the literary patron. If you've ever heard the phrase, the pen is mightier than the sword, it definitely applied to Mary Herbert. She was the sister of Sir Philip Sidney. Yes, that Philip Sidney, who was a poet and died in the Battle of Zutphen, giving water to another injured soldier. She was actually just as influential. She was a poet, a translator, a major patron of the arts, creating a literary hub at Wilton House that helped to shape the golden age of Elizabethan literature. She translated classical texts, making them accessible to English audiences, and she supported countless writers, musicians, and scholars. In a time where most women were expected to be silent, Mary was publishing, writing, and making sure the best minds of her period had a place to thrive. Finally, Jane Dormer, the diplomatic powerhouse. Some women fought battles on the field, others fought them in court. Jane Dormer, she fought them in the shadows. She was a close confidant of Mary I, but when Elizabeth took the throne, Jane left England and became a key player in the Spanish court. She used her position to smuggle English Catholics out of England, helped them escape Elizabeth's anti-Catholic laws. She built a network of exiles, funneled money to the resistance efforts, and was basically an undercover operative for Catholic interests in Spain. She may not have worn armor or carried a sword, but she was just as much of a warrior as any Tudor soldier. So, Tudor history is full of powerful men, but let's be real, none of them could have done it without the women. These 10 women ruled, built, fought, wrote, and schemed their way into history, proving that even in a world designed to keep them out of power, they found ways to take it anyway. Who is your favorite kick-ass Tudor woman? Let me know in the comments. If there's other people that you would like to have mentioned, let me know about them. All right, if you made it this far in the video and you liked it, I sure would appreciate a press of that like button. It helps to feed that algorithm and get our content to even more people. I hope I earned your subscription to my channel where I put out content like this on the regular. If you would like to keep watching content on Tudor women, here's a video on Elizabeth Barton, the Maid of Kent. I just love her. And here's a video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, you are deeply loved. I'm so glad I shared the planet with you. I'll be back soon. Don't forget to drink your water. Bye-bye.